Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double A Team podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Negishi, and with me, as always, is my co-host from Awful Announcing. It is Ken Fang. Ken, good to catch up with you. It's been a while. How are you?
Good, Stephen. Good to be on with you. I know we were not on last week. We were very busy with the NFL draft, so that took precedence. And I know you were quite busy talking about the Bears, and I'm sure you're very happy about what their picks. We'll talk all about that. Coming.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a Browns fans. For those who are not familiar with, I am a diehard Chicago Bears fan. I have actually been fortunate enough to start writing for a website called BearGogglesOn.com, which is a part of a fan-sided network for almost a year and a half. So obviously, we have a lot to talk about in the NFL draft that took place last week, and it's been probably the least probably surprising news of the day. That the Bears were going to draft Caleb Williams for months now, and I was kind of worried that Williams was going to pull Eli Manning or John Elway and forced themselves out to trade well before the first snap. John Elway steered clear the Baltimore Colts and forced himself to go to Denver. It's kind of fitting. The next year, the Baltimore Colts ended up relocating to Indianapolis to become the Indianapolis Colts. In the snow flurries of midnight, in a Mayflower truck that is still ingrained in the many old fans of Colts. But we all know that Eli Manning did not want to go to San Diego Chargers, who had the number one pick back in 2004. He forced himself out of there.
Mhm.
He was picked first by the Chargers. And then when the Giants picked Phillip Rivers, they immediately swapped. And the Giants had to give up an extra number one pick, the next year's number one pick, which turned out to be Sean Merriman, who is now an MMA fighter and the host. Both Rivers and Eli Manning had a very good career, but I think Rivers is somebody who could go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in time. Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants, and he seems to be doing very well himself with his brother Peyton during Monday Night Football season, as well as also being on commercials as well. So I did worry that Caleb, for all that stuff that he did off the field and on the field, where he was seen crying, if you all remember, with his family. This was, I believe, against Washington back in early November of last year. And then people like RG3 and Colin Cowherd, I don't know if they were speaking, for themselves or on behalf of the family members, that he didn't want to go to Chicago, which I remember Colin Cowherd had to backtrack the very next day after going on a Chicago radio station and then having to explain himself, which was kind of a somewhat a very, very embarrassing situation. And then RG3, right up until the day of the draft, continued to harp on as if he's like a Washington propagandist that he should seek a trade to go to Washington, even though Washington is not exactly in a favorable destination, other than the fact that he is from Washington. And it turns out that his father's what was then known as the Redskins fan, and tried to make him and turn him into a fan, but I guess he's more of an Aaron Rodgers fan, so he was a Packers fan, which now that he's a Bear, it's basically bygones be bygones, and so it's really, really great that I'm finally thankful that it's out of the way. I've complained about the social media discourse between the Justin Fields fans versus Caleb Williams fans, the media members. As I said, RG3 Colin Cowherd, and then even the ones in Chicago who shall remain nameless, I should say, stoke fire pretty much the entire off season. So now that the draft is officially over, I'm just so glad that Caleb Williams is a Bear. He seems to have embraced the idea of being a Bear. You've seen him do some like a bear claw, stuff on social media. He is somebody that, a lot of people gave a lot of crap about, painting nails and the color of the phones, if you remember, Ken. And,
Right.
We touched on about this. It's like it's such a non-story to begin with.
Right.
And I was listening to Chicago radio station, I think the day after Williams was selected. And I think this one caller in particular, he was also somewhat skeptical and, critical of Williams's, thing off the field, But I think based on what he has shown this past week, I think there are a lot of fans, and thankfully, including this caller who called into the ESPN Chicago, admitted that they were probably misunderstood about Caleb Williams, and that they are starting to embrace him, not just as a football player, but thankfully also as somebody who is a hardworking young man that was misunderstood, and that they're starting to rally behind him now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the fact is that it's really silly about harping on his preferred nail polish color, all this stuff. It doesn't affect how he plays. That's the main thing. Like I said in the past, if let's say he does gangbusters as a quarterback, it's gonna be seen as eccentric and a beautiful thing about his character. Of course, if he doesn't do well, everyone's going to harp on, oh, it's the nail polish and all that stuff. But, to be honest with you, Steven, I think that he's a colorful guy. He's a character. And I think that Chicago embraces characters, especially if you do well. I mean, you're going to have Angel Reese there and for the Chicago guy. We've had Dennis Rodman for the Chicago Bears, for the Chicago Bulls, I'm sorry. Jim McMahon for the Chicago Bears. All these colorful characters who have been in Chicago, they embrace the city. If Caleb Williams does that, embrace the city, plays well, does lights out, is expected to play well as the quarterback for the Bears, it's going to be seen as a great thing. Everyone's going to say, "Oh, he just paints his nails. Oh, nobody cares. It's just him. It's just Caleb." And I think that's and if he does that, that's eventually that's going to be the narrative instead of the silly things like, "Oh, he's painting his nails. What type of player is he? Oh, what's going on here?" No, that's and I think Chicago will embrace him as long as he does well, and will become that'll become part of his colorful character, and I think that's going to be a wonderful thing.
Yeah, we all know the old adage in sports: winning cures everything, and in this case, the Bears certainly have not done enough winning. And I wrote it on my recent article on Bear Goggles On about, obviously the rebuilding of the Chicago Bears is officially now completed following this year's draft. And it's so nice that I wrote basically what I just mentioned about RG3 and Colin Cowherd saying that he doesn't want to play in Chicago. He should force his way to his hometown in Washington and all that nonsense. And that, I'm just happy that Williams and his handlers, mainly his father, really, really, handle it very, very well, whatever the naysayers were saying. They just, took it and they just, ran it back and just, turned it against them. So, I feel that Ryan Poles is finally glad that this is officially over. I wrote that, perhaps no one was looking forward to this day more than the Bears general manager, Ryan Poles. 2 years ago when he took over, he really tore this team down with nothing to work with. And in such a short amount of time, he really turned this franchise around. Of course, the turning point was the last year's trade when the Bears had the first overall pick and traded to Carolina for their first and second round pick last year, second round pick, a first round pick this year, which of course turned into Caleb Williams. And then they have the second round pick from next year's draft also as well. And then you get DJ Moore in return as well. I know Carolina really didn't want to give up, but unfortunately they ended up having to give up on him because the other player that the Carolina was forced to give up was Brian Burns, who we know that was traded to the New York Giants just before the draft this year. So the Bears were able to fleece Carolina. And as we know, maybe that's perhaps a reason why their owner, David Tepper, has become such a Dan Snyder-like loser. And, their loss is our gain. And thankfully, that trade was a fast track to the Bears rebuilding. And this offseason, they signed DeAndre Swift, Gerald Everett, and traded for Keenan Allen. And then with the 9th pick overall that they had their own pick, they took Rome Odunze, who I was so concerned that somebody was going to jump up and get him because, the top 3 receivers in this year's draft, Marvin Harrison Jr., who went to the Arizona at 4, Malik Neighbors went to the Giants at 6, and that left Rome Odunze. And, thankfully Tennessee drafted J.C. Latham, the massive offensive lineman from Alabama. And then the Falcons, as you pointed there, Ken, they made a puzzling pick in the first round, which ultimately paved way for the Bears to get Rome Odunze at number 9 because Atlanta picked Michael Penix Jr., the talented quarterback from Washington that Rome Odunze was fortunate enough to, get the ball from as an 8th overall pick. This was actually a real stunner because I did not see this coming at all.
No one
after they spent $100 million in guaranteed money for Kirk Cousins, about a month before the draft. And this was puzzling. Even the selection of Kirk Cousins was puzzling enough. The explanation given by their general manager, Terry Fontenot, was just as baffling because he gave the old Green Bay Packer analogy of, them setting Jordan Love behind Aaron Rodgers for about 3 years before he became a starter this past season. And then also, of course, Rodgers had to deal with the same treatment when he had to sit 3 years behind Brett Favre. Yeah. Coincidentally, Favre and Aaron Rodgers both got traded to the New York Jets, as you all remember. So it's a deja vu again anyway. But, that explanation really doesn't fly with me because Michael Penix is 23, but he's going to turn 24 next month. And he has had some serious injuries that he had to overcome with 2 shoulder operations, tore same Achilles and ear within every other year. That is a killer. And yet somehow Penix Jr. Turned himself into a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate. He was a finalist last year. Took his team, Washington, to the national championship where they beat the Texas Longhorns before they fell to the eventual champion, University of Michigan. And I just didn't see this one coming. And I just don't see the justification of drafting Penix that high and use the Green Bay model as some sort of justification. Because by the time, if they go with that plan, Michael Penix Jr. is going to be 27 years old and probably toward the end of his rookie contract. So the crazy part is Atlanta is trying to compete and try to win now. I think it was well documented that their owner Arthur Blank is become very, very impatient and wants to win immediately. But drafting panics indicates that they're also, thinking about the future, which certainly with the way that this draft came about, it doesn't make anybody happy, and I know the fans aren't happy, and it certainly kind of questions where the Atlanta Falcons organization is heading in the next couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. As you mentioned, it was a very strange pick. It surprised everybody, and I think everyone was expecting Penix to go a little bit further down.
Right.
Where J.J. McCarthy was picked actually by Minnesota. So the fact is that I understand. I kind of understand the thinking of they saying, okay, you have a great player at that position, you want to get him, but you also have Kirk Cousins, as you mentioned, with a guaranteed 9-figure contract. So what is the point there? And I know you have Raheem. You have the coach there,
Raheem Morris, yeah,
Morris, and you have a general manager who's trying to make a big splash. But I don't know if this is the right way to do it. Yes, Green Bay has a great model of success with quarterbacks, but it's not like you're trying to. It's like when they picked Aaron Rodgers, he fell into their lap. He fell well, as we all know, he fell well down in the first round. And then for Jordan Love, it was just one of those situations where you just didn't know where Rodgers was, what head is at. Is he going to retire, or is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? And he was getting. It was just the question that did Green Bay want to deal with him anymore? So they drafted Jordan Love to be ready in case that Rodgers decided to bolt, and they decided to trade him off to Green Bay. So trade him off to New York. I'm sorry, but in this situation here, you have Kirk Cousins, who is pretty much, even though he was hurt last season, is going to come off and he's going to be ready. He still has a great arm. We all know that. He still has a decent quarterback, and he's still in his prime. But yet you make this deal to draft Penix, and as you mentioned, he's an older rookie because of COVID. Transferred over to Washington. Is going and as you mentioned, raised his draft value by a great postseason, a great season last season, and now she, as you mentioned, Stephen, did a great job over in the college football playoff, and almost kind of and almost single-handedly got Washington to where they did, and almost overachieving against Michigan in the college football playoff. But overall, Stephen, I think maybe Atlanta drafted him too high, to be honest with you. I think that he could have been an 11th. He could have been easily an 11th pick, but Atlanta just kind of saw, like, say, oh, we have to draft him. They just, I understand the old adage of best athlete available. And yes, he was sitting there, but if Atlanta wanted to get him, they could have easily traded down to get him. I don't think there was a big clamor to get Michael Penix at 8 or 9 or even 10. Like I said, Minnesota was waiting at 11 to get him, but then because of that, it forced their hand to go up to 10 to get J.J. McCarthy from Michigan. So Atlanta really upset the apple cart here extensively, Stephen. And
right.
I don't know. I'll be honest. I think Penix is going to do well in the NFL. I just don't know if it's going to be whether I don't know if he's going to say, I'll be willing to sit for 2 or 3 years or force a trade and make them trade Kirk Cousins. I don't know. It's a really weird situation.
It really is. Cousins himself came off a Achilles injury, and he still got the bag, as people like to say. 4 years and $180 million. Certainly, that's a lot of money for a guy who's only won one playoff game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's a talk of desperation of sorts, without a doubt. And I'm very curious to see, how this dynamic turns out, because I believe Falcons didn't even inform him that they were picking him until the pick was made. That's not how you want to that's a getting your foot on the wrong end there. And I'll be curious if how long can Cousins can fend off Michael Penix Jr. And how that the locker room dynamics is going to be so awkward for the Falcons fans and Falcons players in particular. So I'll be very curious how this really turns out, and if this is going to blow up, or if this is going to be we look back 2-3 years from now and just say it was all about nothing. So looking at the other draft picks, Ken, a lot of history was made. Basically, 6 quarterbacks went into the top 12, if I'm not mistaken, Ken.
That's right.
Jaden Daniels, the Heisman winner from LSU, went very next to the Washington Commanders right after Caleb Williams. Drake May was picked number 3 by the New England Patriots. Patriots were taking a lot of trade offers, rumored to be at least, but at least they now stuck with their own gun and then picked a quarterback who will be hopefully marginally better than Mac Jones. Marvin Harrison Jr., the son of Hall of Famer, went to number 4 at Arizona. The number 5, here's a pick that's somewhat of a surprising, maybe not as the Falcons pick, but Joe Alt, the son of a former offensive lineman, Jim Harbaugh picked him in his first draft with the Chargers. Malik Neighbors went to the Giants. Again, J.C. Latham, Michael Penix, Rome Odunze. And then Minnesota moved up one spot. They swapped out with the Jets into the top 10 and got J.J. McCarthy, who a lot of people were very, very polarizing on this guy because he's a winner, obviously, having won national title last year under Jim Harbaugh. And even there were rumors that Harbaugh was willing to trade away Justin. Sounded very preposterous. Thankfully, it did not happen for the Chargers fans. But he was taken by the Minnesota Vikings, who desperately need a quarterback after, Kirk Cousins leaving. And I'm sure this is somewhat of a blessing in disguise for them, that Cousins ended up taking massive money only to see him get, only to see the team that he signed drafted Michael Penix very, very high. J.J. McCarthy is a local kid here in Illinois out of LaGrange. He was actually in Michigan for the draft night, and he gets to stay home very, very close. Obviously, he gets to probably have a little bit of a more leeway compared to the other traditional rookie quarterbacks that I just mentioned. He gets to probably sit a little bit longer with Sam Darnold starting for the Vikings this upcoming season, unless Darnold craps his bed and just looks god-awful or suffers a massive injury.
He's done that before. Yeah, it's possible. It's very possible with Sam Darnold. We don't know what Sam Darnold we're going to get.
Right. Well, at least JJ will get some time, and hopefully that Vikings hope that Darnold can be effective before the eventual, succession to JJ McCarthy. If the Vikings are struggling, or again Darnold is injured, and the offense is not as efficient, then at least JJ will hopefully have enough time to sit behind the bench and learn a few things or two. And what better person to learn from than Sam Darnold, who knows a thing or two about high expectations when he was drafted. I believe 3rd or 4th overall by the Jets back in 2018. So hopefully Darnold can help JJ McCarthy learn a few things about managing high expectations and stuff like that. And the defense finally, I got to say, Bo Nix was picked 12 overall. That was the last of the quarterback that was taken by the Broncos. It wasn't until, I believe, number 15, Laiatu Latu of UCLA. I believe he was the first defensive player taken. And then it's a terrific story. He's a guy who was medically retired in Washington because of a neck injury, and I was actually kind of interested in him because he's a pass rusher, and that the Bears definitely needed another pass rusher alongside Montez Sweat. But his neck injury was somewhat of a massive concern. But looks like it wasn't concerning enough for Colts to get him. Another player Bears that was linked to Byron Murphy, the first defensive tackle taken. And then Minnesota move up to get Dallas Turner, who I'm not a fan of, having to see him twice a year now. Instead, the Bears were also linked to him, but I think he's more of a 3-4 edge, or just basically a guy standing up rather than having his hands down in a traditional 4-3 sense. And then as you keep going down, Ken, more and more towards the end, offensive line linemen were dominated the draft this year. Olu Fashanu was picked by the Jets at 11 after swapping with the Vikings. Troy Fautanu, Amaris Mims, Jordan Morgan, Graham Barton, certainly, and then Tyler Guyton. And then you see the slur of receivers drafted toward the end. Xavier Worthy, who set a combine record with 4.21 40 yards. Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Leggett, guys who were expected to be a high second-round pick, snuck inside the first round as well. Brian Thomas Jr. was a pick by the Jacksonville Jaguars. He certainly benefited from playing with Malik Neighbors last year as well. Yeah, so it's a heavy offensive draft. There's no question about it. The quarterbacks, whether you like it or not, 6 quarterbacks and 12 picks. That's like every other quarterback, every other pick. And it's even if you're like a lower end of the quarterback rankings, I think it's safe to say that it only takes one team, Ken, to find you attractive enough to say, we're picking you in the first round. As we saw with Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix picked 12th overall by the Denver Broncos.
Right, and as far as my Cleveland Browns are concerned, Steven, they just chose wherever they had a need. They went for their first. They weren't, because of the trade for Deshaun Watson with Houston. They didn't have a first round pick again this year. They had the pick was in the second round. They chose defensive tackle Mike Hall Jr. of Ohio.
He's a good player. I really liked him too.
Yes. And then they went to Michigan, of all things. Can you imagine that? They went Ohio State first and Michigan in the second pick in round 3 with the guard Zach Zinter of Michigan. Well regarded, did a great job over in the center of the offensive line for Michigan. I think he's going to be very solid in the middle. Then they took a wide receiver from Louisville, Jamari Thrash. They definitely do need receivers at that position. And then their final pick was Nathaniel Watson, a linebacker from Mississippi State. Steven, overall, they didn't have many picks. They only had 4. As I mentioned, they did a lot of trading over the last couple of seasons. Again, they did a lot of trading of a lot of those picks to Houston to get Watson. So they were very thin over the last 2 seasons. We'll see how that plays out. But as far as I'm concerned, they drafted where they needed to. I like the picks that they had, especially when you have Mike Hall and you also have Zach Zinter of Ohio State and Michigan. So I think those are very solid picks. And we'll see how the Browns do, especially after last season's. They lost, of course, in the wild card to Houston, of all things, of all teams. And we'll see what happens with them. But overall, when you don't have that many picks, you have to make your picks really good and a good quality. And I thought they did, at least for the first 2 picks.
Sox baseball is on ESPN 1000. Due to Major League Baseball restrictions, the game is blacked out in your area.
I'm so sorry. My phone malfunctioned and activated there.
I was going to say, are you trying to listen to baseball at the same time you listen?
No. Ken, hold on a second. I'm going to have to take this call. I apologize.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to have to take that call. But in the meantime, we'll take Stephen off for a second here. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit more about the draft. Oh, let's bring us back here. Hold on. There we go. Let's bring Stephen. Let's hide Stephen for a second here. If I can bring it. But in any event, let's talk a little bit about what else is going on.
I'm so sorry. It was my Uber driver.
Oh, that's okay.
My apartment address in the order. My apologies there. So,
no problem.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland. I'm sure you're relieved, Ken, that the Deshaun Watson trade is finally consummated. That neither team owes each other picks, money, or players, and none of that stuff. It's completely done.
Yeah. So next season, hopefully the Browns don't decide to trade away their first round pick and actually keep it and actually pick. But in any event, also interestingly enough, with Bill Belichick out of coaching and Nick Saban retiring from coaching, both of them worked for ESPN platforms separately.
Yeah.
During the draft. Nick Saban was on ABC, and of course, he was very biased towards Alabama players being chosen. Bill Belichick was online during the first round with Pat McAfee, and his stories and also his assessment of interesting of Drake May of going to the Patriots, and he's saying that he's not going to be. He's saying that they're comparing him to Jake Allen, and I don't think he's that. Jake Allen's a
Josh Allen, right?
Josh Allen. I think he goes. I think Josh Allen's a great quarterback, but we'll see if May. I don't think May is there yet. So interesting. Interesting candor by Bill Belichick, especially in regards to the New England Patriots, but. The fact is, both of Belichick and Saban, on their own way, were highly praised for their performances at the draft. And I don't know if you saw any of it, Stephen. I happened to see a little bit of Nick Saban. I thought he was quite relaxed with the College Game Day crew. Belichick is trying to do a little bit of rehab, of reputation rehab, especially after being a character assassination by the Crafts during the Dynasty Apple TV Plus documentary. So he's also going to, as we mentioned in the last couple of weeks, he's going to be on the Manning cast during Monday Night Football this season. I think that Belichick, as long as he shows some humor, shows some great stuff, I think he'll be back in coaching. I think he's looking at the Dallas Cowboys, especially if they don't do well with Mike McCarthy. I think that's a position he's looking for. And it's going to be interesting to see how Belichick and I would love to see those two go back and forth because they have a history together. They worked, as a matter of fact, on the same coaching staff with on the Cleveland Browns. Belichick was the head coach. Saban was a coordinator on the staff. They're both very good friends. During their time in both New England and Alabama, Belichick and Saban would vacation together and see each other and exchange ideas on coaching. So I would love to see those two get together for a podcast, to be interesting enough, Stephen. And I would love to see those two get together because they're showing a different side to each other. Both aren't known as very good. Both are not known for their humor, but I think they're showing that, especially on TV this season. This upcoming season.
Yeah, I found it very, very interesting how Belichick and Saban certainly presented themselves during the draft. Their impeccable knowledge and behind the scenes stuff. Saban as a college coach certainly knows a lot about, of course, the Alabama players and also the team players that his team has faced in the past. The schools, of course, mainly in the SEC. The college certainly the scouting acumen that Nick Saban brings, and then Bill Belichick's acumen on drafting players, and also keep always adding more pieces when they become free agents or become more expensive to maintain them. Certainly is well documented, and also Belichick's ability as a coach and also maybe as a talent evaluator though it kind of was his ultimate downturn toward the end of his career when Tom Brady ended up leaving, and then a lot of the drafts picks that in the post Tom Brady era became that did not pan out, unfortunately. But certainly Belichick with Pat McAfee show of all shows certainly looked very, very comfortable interacting with the Pat McAfee and his cast of crews. I think Saban, of course, is already expected to be on College Game Day this upcoming season. So this was, I think, you got a glimpse of what Nick Saban will likely to bring as an analyst. Perhaps this is maybe a transitioning into maybe post Lee Corso era. I think Corso obviously has been dealing with health and other stuff. So at some point they're going to have a contingent plan, and maybe this is the plan that the ESPN has in case Lee Corso decides to call it quits, whether it's this upcoming year or the year after in 2025. So I give props to both Belichick and Saban for making their presence known in the draft, and I hope that maybe those who watched it on television at some point maybe found their insights very, very interesting and very, very useful as well.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, both of them did quite well separately. Like I said, on ESPN platforms, I think Belichick surprised a lot of people by showing his humor. So I think that as long as he continues to show that, and he's going to be doing that with the Eli and Peyton, who like to be playful a little bit on Monday Night Football on the Manning Cast. He shows a little bit of that. Is willing to play along. I think he's good. I think he'll be just fine. From what I have heard, Stephen, and this is from various media members who know Belichick. He's known, and also Jim Nantz, who I've talked to as well. He said that Belichick is known for a very good sense of humor, but he just doesn't show it with the media. He shows it privately. And we saw glimpses of that with some of the NFL Films documentaries, especially like Do Your Job, and also a look at the Patriots when they were in the middle of their Super Bowl, when he came in dressed as a pirate during one of the Halloween parties that Randy Moss convinced him.
I remember that.
Yep. So he does have a sense of humor. He just decides not to show it. If he shows some of those glimpses of that, I think that that reputation, as I mentioned, will be restored, and I think has a chance for him to be hired for as a coach next season, maybe with the Cowboys. We'll wait and see. But interesting. We'll have to wait and see what goes on as a new season comes along. Oh, I do like to mention this, Stephen. And by the way, you and I have talked about this. Roger Goodell appeared on. We'll mention this too in a quick second. But I just want to mention how quickly that something you and I talked about over the last. I think
talking about the 18-game schedule.
The 18-game schedule. And while people are saying, and I've been saying this for 10 years, Stephen, that this is going to happen. We're going to have an 18-game schedule, 2 buys, and it's going to push the NFL Super Bowl to President's Day weekend, which would give everyone's saying that we should have a holiday after the Super Bowl anyway. That's going to make a natural holiday with the President's Day. Roger Goodell, when he says something, it generally does happen. And some people were speculating that the earliest this could happen would be 2030, when the collective bargaining agreement expires. I have a feeling it's going to happen before then. If Roger Goodell mentions it, it usually happens quite quickly. And I think that, and I agree with him, I'm not a big fan of the preseason. We've gone from 6 preseason games back in the 1970s down to 4. It's now down to 3 because we're at 17 regular season games. I have a feeling that we're going to go down to 2, and then that'll be it. And we'll have 18 regular season games. And that will allow for an international game. Every team will have one international game for that season. And, right. Also in addition to, whether 9 home games and 8, road games or whatever the split's going to be, and then one of them is going to be on the road. So I think this is going to happen. It's going to be probably, I would say, this is my prediction, Stephen. It's going to happen within the next 3 years. That's how quickly it's going to be. This will be a great way for the NFL and Roger Goodell. It'll be his last legacy because I think his contract runs out in 2027, Stephen. I have to think about that. But this is one thing he wants to do before he leaves, and get that 18th regular season game and have the Super Bowl being played late in February, where they can get a lot of money and also have it played in the President's Day weekend. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not that surprising. NFL is the king, and it is a huge content that drives ratings, and you want more games. You want more games during the week. As we were witnessing the games being played on Christmas this year, which falls on, I believe, Wednesday. Yes. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Player safety be damned. I think a lot of people are already aware of it. I know Albert Breer of MMQB mentioned it's nothing more than a money grab. Let's call it what it is. I appreciate Albert being upfront and honest about what this is all about anyway. And again, player safety be damned. It's difficult. I just hope that teams who are forced to play on Christmas Day at least is coming off a bye week.
Yeah.
Because it would be unfortunate that you play a game on Sunday, and then you have only 2 days of rest and then play on Wednesday. I mean, it's hard enough to play on a Thursday, and we know this. Obviously, the quality of the game on Thursday nights have been somewhat questionable. So, I just hope that at some point, the players have the balls to push back. The NFLPA president. And then the players at some point say, I think we have kind of reached a plateau, threshold of how many games that they can actually play under these current formats. You still have Thursday night games, which is obviously very, very questionable from a quality and health standpoint.
Yep.
So, maybe this is the, hopefully the last of it. I just can't see the game going to 20 or even much more than that.
That will not happen.
I pray that it won't happen.
Sure. But I know that the CFL plays 18 weeks, and I think that's what the NFL models it, and they want to see something like that. They want to have something similar to that. They like the fact they have the 18 weeks. It's a nice round schedule. 17 games is not a round. It's not a round thing. You want to have teams. It's right now either you're above one game over 500 or you're one game under 500. You want to have at least a split season where you have a 500 season. You don't want to have one game over.
Right, the 17 game odd schedule doesn't sound right at all. Yeah.
So I think that's what the NFL is looking at. I know people have said, and people have told me when I predicted this 10 years ago, they told me to shut up. It'll never happen. I'm not saying that I'm gloating the fact that I'm right about this, but I just want to say that knowing Roger Goodell and studying him as I have over the last few years, I mean, this is a guy, if you remember, Steven, Sunday Night Football used to not be played against the World Series. Now they under Goodell, they said, well, that it was a gentleman's agreement between the NFL and Major League Baseball that Sunday Night Football would take a bye week against the World Series, so the World Series would have that night to all to itself. Well, Goodell decided to throw that out the window in 2013 or so. He said, okay, we're just going to go up against the World Series. We know the NFL is going to beat the World Series. That's no problem with us. So he's done that and forced the World Series not to play on Sunday night. So, and make baseball irrelevant during that weekend. So once I saw that, I said he's going to go to 18 weeks. I kind of know this guy. I kind of see where this is headed. People said, "Oh no, it's going to be 16 weeks forever. It's not going to do that." Well, we got a 17th game, and now we're going to get an 18th week with it. He's going to like give the players like a little bit of a carrot by saying, "Okay, don't worry, we'll give you a second bye week," and he's also going to try and sneak in another team to make that wild card weekend have 8 games. So look for that. So Steven, that's my prediction. But
no, I see it. I see it because this, the 17 game odd is odd, and then 17 playoff is odd. You might as well basically just water it down and have the rest of at least half of the league have the option to get in. To make it more interesting, because I think the days of having a number one seed overall is becoming more and more meaningless now.
Yes.
And just like with the baseball, having an extra bye doesn't seem like it's a huge advantages anymore. So we'll see if the football decides that maybe the number one overall seed has to play the 8th seed, so that they can generate more money as it goes into the 18 regular season games, like you've been saying for quite a while now. All right, let's move on to the one that I've accidentally posted earlier. Boomer Esiason and Phil Simms are no longer on the NFL Today on CBS. This came, I believe, yesterday, correct?
Yep. It dropped yesterday, yes. It came Monday morning, actually. It came early. Boomer Esiason announced it on his radio show that's also simulcast on CBS Sports Network. It was kind of a mixed bag, Stephen. He announced that, yes, he's extending his contract with WFAN. CBS Sports Network is extending its contract to simulcast the Boomer and Geo show, which it does every day from 6 to 10 every morning. And then he announced that he was no longer going to be on the NFL Today. He said it wasn't his decision. I pretty much knew this was going to happen because both Boomer and Phil are getting older. And, they're in their 60s. The whole thing about television these days is getting younger. And so they replaced him with Matt Ryan. Also, too, this is a move made by new CBS Sports chairman David Burson, who I've talked to in the past. Sean McManus retired, who was the previous CBS Sports chairman, retired right after the Masters. So when you're the new guy, you want to make your own mark on the show. Boomer and Phil's contracts were finished at the end of the season. Also, end of this past season. Also, Bill Cowher and Nate Burleson, their contracts were also up the end. So a lot of people were wondering what was going to happen. Cowher and Burleson were renewed. James Brown, who was the host, was renewed earlier in the season. So I think it's as much as I hate to see it, I know this is the business. You want to get younger. You want to get someone who's been known. Matt Ryan has impressed CBS in his 1 year working with Andrew Catalong and Tiki Barber on games in the 2023 season. Yep. So he's done quite well. And so I have a feeling that this was a natural progression, give him a bigger platform, put him in the studio along with Cowher and Burleson. And not only that, by getting rid of two people and bringing in one, you're less crowded on the set too. So it's going to, instead of having 5 people on the set, you have 4 and you get more people in. Of course, JJ Watt is going to be there part-time. He's not going to be there full-time, but it allows CBS a little bit more breathing room in the studio.
Yeah, it's an end of an era, certainly.
Yes.
Having watched both Esiason and Simms for quite a while. Boomer has been a studio analyst for a long time.
2001 is when he joined.
Right. I don't know did he call games before?
Yeah, he did. He did. He was on Monday Night Football one season with Al Michaels, if you remember that, Stephen. That was the year which the Rams and the Titans played in the Super Bowl. He called the Super Bowl with Al Michaels. He didn't get along with Al. You could tell that. There was a lot of tension in the booth. So he called 2 seasons with on Monday Night Football. First with Al Michaels, and he replaced Frank Gifford. And he worked with Dan Dierdorf. Then ESPN decided to drop Dan Dierdorf, and it became a 2-man booth with Michaels and Esiason. But Michaels and Esiason just didn't get along very well. And then after Esiason was basically took a year off, he was hired by CBS. Esiason also did Monday Night Football with Marv Albert on Westwood One Radio.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's why I was so synonymous and familiar. That's right. I listened to, Westwood One Radio quite a while with, Boomer in the booth as well. So certainly, yeah. It's certainly, I think a lot of people are going to get probably, take a while to get used to. I know a lot of people are probably hypercritical of Esiason and maybe Phil Simms, more towards Simms because of his more dry and mundane style, calling games with Jim Nance and then Jim Nance and and then eventually when he got replaced by Tony Romo back in just before the start of 2017 season, if you remember.
Right. So. Well, it's interesting. Phil had a long career. He was first on ESPN on Sunday on NFL Countdown with Chris Berman. He then went to NBC because he didn't sign his contract with ESPN. He was able to move to NBC. We went with the booth with Dick Enberg and Paul McGuire. And then when NBC lost football, he worked with Greg Gumbel first in the booth and then Jim Nance. And as you mentioned, at first he was quite good, but then I noticed it was the Super Bowl, which I think it was Super Bowl 47, which is when the lights went out in the Louisiana Superdome. That was when Phil Simms really had a bad game, and it was when his reputation as a game analyst really went downhill because he was making some strange remarks during that game in San Francisco and Baltimore. He was way off on some of his analysis, and when you lose it with fans, that's when he really started getting negative commentary. So that's when CBS decided eventually replaced him with Tony Romo, as you mentioned, in 2017. And he became a studio analyst. He actually worked well off of Boomer Esiason because A, they kind of looked like each other, and B, they always got confused with each other. And Esiason liked to poke him quite a bit. So it was good. It was kind of a good thing to see him in the studio where he could only make 15-second analysis, whereas being a game analysis, you annoy everybody. So, but overall, as you mentioned, end of an era. Esiason is still going to be seen nationally on his radio show. Simms, he has a show on a network called Believe Football, BLV. So he has an online show with his son, Chris Simms. So we'll see how he does, and we'll see what happens with him. But overall, he says that this isn't it for him. But to be honest with you, I don't think we'll see him on a national platform again because both Esiason and Simms are in their 60s. And as I mentioned, television likes to use go younger and get younger people in and cheaper money, basically.
Right. We talked a couple of weeks ago about John Sterling retiring from the Yankees booth, Jack Edwards and Jeff Rimmer both retiring from their jobs with the Boston Bruins. Jack Edwards, you know him from your neck of the woods. Jeff Rimmer with the Columbus Blue Jackets, among others. Certainly, the old guards are changing. This isn't just limited to announcers, play-by-play people. The analysts also, they're getting replaced by younger generations. Certainly, as we witnessed with Matt Ryan and J.J. Watt. Maybe Bill Cowher is probably getting close to himself getting ousted as well because of his age. And I know a lot of people doesn't seem to enjoy Bill Cowher's analysis as well. You wonder, maybe if CBS is, ushering in a new analyst themselves, how this is going to impact the Fox broadcast. Their, the studio team, Kirk Menefee, Terry Bradshaw, Jimmy Johnson, Howie Long,
Michael Strahan.
Michael Strahan. Thank you very much. They have a lot of, a veteran crew on that side as well.
Yeah, Stephen, they have been there, especially with Terry Bradshaw, Howie Long, and Jimmy Johnson. They started the show back in 1994. Now, Johnson, of course, left for a couple of seasons to coach the Miami Dolphins. He was replaced by Chris Collinsworth, and then Johnson came back, and he's been on the show ever since. But as you mentioned, you've got, I think, both Howie Long and Terry Bradshaw are in their 70s. Howie Long is in his 60s. You just wonder. I've been wondering how. I know that Fox is very loyal to that show, and they want to keep them they want to stay loyal to that program, but you just got to wonder when is. I know that Fox also has a show with Carissa Thompson and not Randy Moss. They have a show.
Woodson, I think Charles Woodson.
Yeah, they have a younger cast with Fox NFL Kickoff. You just wonder when that show is gonna if that cast will move over to Fox NFL Sunday. Because it's a younger crew and it's basically almost the same show. It's just instead of Jay Glazer, they have Peter Schrager for their insider, and they have all these other people. So you just wonder if they're just going to say, "Hey, let's just move that show over." But it's interesting, Stephen. I've been as you mentioned, Fox has some thinking to do. I've been wondering when they're going to finally make that move, or if they're going to allow Bradshaw, Long, and Johnson to call their own shot, or just replace them all together. I have no idea if this is their last. I keep predicting this is their last season. I keep saying every year this is going to be their last season. It's not. Fox has been very loyal to them, and we'll see when that day comes.
Yeah, I think it could be coming sooner rather than later, if recent actions are indication. All right, Ken, we'll wrap it up with the story of USA and Mexico withdrawing their bidding for 2027 Women's World Cup. This is actually happening a year after, the Men's World Cup in 2026, which does seem make sense, continuing on with the soccer festivity a year after. You have the infrastructure in place, for both U.S. and Mexico. Canada is not in this one at all.
No.
It does seem as though U.S. is aiming for the one that's 4 years later.
Yeah, they want to do
2031, and then that it looks as though, according to some sources, they are saying that Brazil is actually looking for more like the candidate who gets the 2027 World Cup, and then the U.S. gets the Mexico, U.S. and Mexico likely to get the 2031 World Cup. So
yeah, I know that
Germany, I don't know the behind backstories and all that. So
I can tell you a little bit. One of the reasons why they withdrew their bid was the fact is that sponsorship money was not there. The fact is that a lot of the cities that would have been the host for the Men's World Cup would also be for the women's, but they're very frustrated over the fact that FIFA has not given them any guidance over sponsorship and over infrastructure and how they're going to run things. It's getting very late, Stephen. It's, you need that right. For ticket sales and everything. And they have not heard anything from FIFA. So they just decided, let's just focus on the Men's World Cup, get this successful, because US is also going to be hosting Copa America this summer. They're going to be hosting the FIFA Club World Cup the following season. And then they go to the 26. They're also going to have the 26 Men's World Cup. So they said because of this, there's going to be fatigue, especially
money and resources all put into those three.
Yeah, so let's focus on that. Yeah. And so right now, Brazil, and I think there's a European common bid with Germany, and I think some of the Scandinavian countries to do a joint bid there.
Right, I read that too. Yes.
Yeah, so that's going to be decided by FIFA coming up in May. Next month, actually, this is May's coming up very shortly, but in a couple of weeks. So I think probably a good idea for U.S. and Mexico to withdraw, especially with the way that FIFA is running itself right now. They have no guidance right now. They're very angry about the U.S. The organizers for the Club World Cup, the cities, the hosts they haven't heard anything about the Club World Cup, which the USA is hosting, and nothing for the Men's World Cup in 2026. Those are running consecutive years. The FIFA Club World Cup is supposed to be a test event for the Men's World Cup in 2026. And again, FIFA has not given them any guidance, and that's not good, especially we're going to be 2 years coming up for that event. And if you don't have that, and like I said, they want to be able to be ready for ticket sales. They want to be ready for to have the hotels ready. They want to be able to have people ready and the roads ready and police and security And they have none of that ready. They have, I don't know what FIFA is doing, Stephen. Again, we've talked about how corrupt FIFA is and how badly Johnny Infantino, I don't know what he's doing over there, but if he came to the U.S. to tell MLS a few months ago that they need to spend money and they could become the best soccer league in the world, well, he should have come over here to take a look at what's going on with this and direct what's going on with the club in the Men's World Cup, Stephen, because right now there are cities, and I know this, and I heard this from a couple of sources, that the organizers, especially down in Texas and Los Angeles, and especially in Foxborough, which is close to me, they haven't heard nothing from the FIFA's organizers, and they're waiting. They've made many phone calls and say, "Hey, what's going on? We'd like to know. We've got 2 years coming up. We have no idea what's going on. Please give us a roadmap," and they've heard nothing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the game cannot continue on here in North America. Kind of like a piggyback onto the the momentum that the men's game has had. So it's unfortunate, and I do hope that they get the 2031 World Cup as some sort of a consolation prize, and then that hopefully within that 4-year period there will be more stronger commitments. Obviously, with the women's game growing, not just on the the soccer side, but we've seen a women's game grow in basketball and other sports, so that getting the 2031 World Cup, at least in this country, and I just don't understand the joint hosting with Mexico. To be honest with you, I think U.S. alone could definitely host, and maybe Mexico to a degree as well. But I'll be very, very curious to see if U.S. and Mexico are on the same page in this one. Withdrawing obviously takes a lot of guts and a lot of careful planning by both countries. And I just hope that it doesn't backfire on neither one of them, and thinking that 2031 is a shoe-in for something.
Yep. And I'll quickly mention this in regards to 26. I saw an article today, Stephen, that looks like Vancouver is going to have to raise the costs for hosting the 26 World Cup, because it looks like it's going to run almost $500 million from an original estimate of about 400. So it looks like the cost to be a host for the World Cup is going to go up. And again, no word. Vancouver said they've heard nothing in regards to anything in regards to infrastructure and from FIFA or any direction in that whatsoever. But they still have to raise the cost, and money goes to FIFA, and ticket sales, that goes to FIFA as well. That money goes to FIFA. Vancouver's hoping for money from tourism dollars, especially from the people who are going to come in, but we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Absolutely. Money talks, and these sporting events obviously is driven by tourism and money. So I hope it is a good one. Hopefully that the 2026 World Cup is going to be a very, very successful one, so that it can be also something that the women's World Cup can be as I use as an example of whatever the things that didn't work out in the 2026 World Cup, whether it's the planning or security stuff, that can be applied for Women's World Cup in U.S. and Mexico in the near future. Well, Ken, that's going to wrap it up, and we covered a lot of tracks. Certainly one of the big events, the NFL draft has come to an end, and I think it's a little bit of a slow periods right now with baseball. Of course, NBA and NHL hockey is certainly taking place right now. We're going to delve into more of that in our future shows starting next week. The Lakers are gone. The future of LeBron is kind of up in the air. We're going to hear more about maybe the end of Joel Embiid and the 76ers if they lose tonight. Can the Clippers, survive this series without, Kawhi Leonard with the Mavericks and so forth? Just wanted to touch those on and the NHL playoffs as well. There's a lot of good games going on, and it will be very, very interesting to see, who comes out on the next round moving forward.
Yep. And of course, coming up in a couple of weeks, Stephen, the NFL schedule release. We'll have
that's in 2 weeks, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, I believe May 12th is what I'm hearing. So definitely a couple of weeks, but it may be happening the night that we do our show. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll let people know. But certainly we have a lot of as you mentioned, NBA, NFL, NBA, NHL playoffs, and of course the NFL schedule release coming up in the next couple of weeks, and that's something to look forward to. And we'll of course discuss it right here on the Double A Team.
Absolutely. A programming reminder, this Thursday, I am very excited to announce EJ Schneider, who is a NFL draft expert guru, who does a great job with another YouTuber, Brett Coleman, on the NFL draft on their channel, Bootleg Football. EJ Schneider is expected to join me this upcoming Thursday, and I'm very, very excited to announce it. Just got a confirmation from EJ.
Nice.
He'll be joining me. Brett Coleman will not be joining me, unfortunately. My usual guest host, Rashab Shakiri, the Bears YouTuber, it is not known, but EJ and I will power on with or without Rashab Shakiri. So very, very excited, and I hope you make sure to tune in. I will just post it on my X about the announcement on EJ's appearance and his time as well. For Stephen Negishi, Ken Fang from Awful Announcing, we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week on the Double A Team podcast live stream. Good night, everybody.
See you later. Good night.